it's Sandra. Welcome to another episode of Asexualise, my asexual life. This is the place to be for education about asexuality, all things asexual, and I share my own asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. If you haven't already, so you get notified of every time I go live like now or post a new video. So if you're new to this channel, if you didn't know who I am Sandra Bellamy. I'm the author of this awesome Asexual Perspectives 47 Asexual Stories book. And this is the place to be for education about asexuality. I also cover a lot of things like dating and relationships in an asexual context and how to live your asexual life. So this video is all about what is the difference between fancying someone and loving someone. So I don't think I've seen this video covered on other channels at all, but then I haven't done a huge Google search on it. So, but I don't usually see the word fancy. I am asexual heteromantic. I have never experienced a crush in my life. I don't know what crushes are or squidges are other than what people have told me they feel, right? So I have no first-hand experience of that. But I do have first-hand experience of both the difference between fancying a guy, in my case a guy, so fancying someone and loving someone. They are two separate things. So how do you know the difference, right? So when I fancied guys, it was when I was 15 years old, 14 years old. So 14 and 15 when I had boyfriends, because I had boyfriend. Well, when I was 6 years old, I had a boyfriend. That was my first heterosexual boyfriend. So I was in heterosexual relationships for a lot of my life. And when I was 14, I had a boyfriend. Well, I probably had a couple. When I was 14 to 15, basically, I had these two couple of guy boyfriends. They were actually best friends. So I was with one of them, then I was with the other. So yeah, it gets a bit complicated. But anyway, these guys, particularly one of them, right? I just fancied them, and even when I was 15, the guy who tried to have sex with me when I didn't want it, I had to physically stop him. Then I only fancied him as well. So there's at least 3 guys that I have just fancied. However, one of these guys I liked later on in my life, and I developed stronger feelings for him, like love feelings. Not the guy when I was 15, the guy when I was 14, I think it was. But the 14, it might have been 14, 15. These 2 guys were best friends. So it was one of those. Anyway, so what does the feeling of fancy feel like in comparison to love? So when you fancy someone, when I fancied someone, I use my personal experience, I didn't see a long-term future with that person. So I wasn't thinking I'm in a relationship and I'm going to be with this person forever. That didn't cross my mind. I know it sounds really weird because now I'm a bit older than that, you know, and I don't get into a relationship nowadays unless it's going somewhere, personally for me, right? But back then, I was in relationship and these relationships, and it was like, the fancy was like, I'm attracted to you aesthetically. I like spending time with you. I like you being in my life. But that's it. Like, I wasn't fussed if that person left me when I fancied them. If the relationship ended, it wasn't the end of the world. There wasn't much attachment there compared to what there was when I've loved a guy. And it was really weird because I was thinking about doing this video that I knew you'd find it helpful. And I was going back to the time when I fancied these guys, and it was pretty horrible for me actually because these guys weren't good guys. But you know, and there was some dreadful experiences I had with these guys, right? But I'm trying to remember it to help you so you understand the difference. So if you fancy someone, for me personally, I was aesthetically attracted to them, like I said, romantically attracted to them in some ways, but it wasn't hyper romanticism, I wouldn't say. One of the guys I liked being touched by. The guy obviously who tried to do stuff with me I didn't want to do, I didn't like him doing that. And the other guy, I don't think we did any touching. I think it was just kissing. So yeah. But you know, like, at that stage in my life, I wasn't thinking about, oh, if they're going to go off with someone else, or if they fancied someone else, although one of them did go off with someone else. So, well, they had an affair, if you like. But you know what I mean? Back then, I wasn't so bothered for some reason. It wasn't like I was going to be, I don't think I was with him after that, but I think that's what stopped it. But at that point in time, I wasn't like heartbroken to the point of like, felt like my soul was being ripped out of my body, or my heart was being, probably more my heart, you know, like when I've loved a guy, feels like my heart is being ripped out of my body. It's horrible. And it's like when I love a guy, it's intense, and I'm that emotionally bonded to him. It doesn't even break that bond until a very long period afterwards, even if I stop talking to him, if it's full on deep love. I can have love feelings for a guy without it being full on deep love, but full on deep love, it doesn't matter if they're not in my life anymore. If they came back in my life, those feelings could be reactivated, or in the case of the two guys last year, I haven't got over those guys yet. And one of them I haven't been in contact with since June last year. So it's like 6 months nearly now. That was the end of June, I think. 6 months nearly now. So that's a long time. But usually, on average, it takes me at least 8 months just to go from being, you know, loving a guy or having any love feelings for them, because they're out of my life now. You know, there's no point in having those. But sometimes, you know, these things take time to work out the system, to just grieve and get it all out. And for some reason, I keep thinking the Indian guy is going to pop back up in my life somewhere in a future date. You know, so it's kind of weird. But yeah, I'm better off without either of them. You know, my life is much better without either of them. I'm sure there's a much better guy out there for me, right? But I don't want to do dating or relationships at the moment for that reason specifically. That you know, and I want to focus on myself now. I've focused on dating relationships for 7.5 years, and I'm done with that now. You know, I just want to focus on my career and myself. I feel much better and more calmer in that way. I've got enough stress with other things going on in my life at the moment, right? And so yeah, it's a very, very big contrast difference, you know, like fancy is like not as intense. It's like enjoyable. You like spending time with him. You are aesthetically attracted to them. Well, that's in my case. So it depends what type of attraction to experience, but you're attracted to them in some way, and you like to spend time with them, be around them. And, you know, but, you know, you don't think about it being long term. It might become long term. You might go from fancy to love feelings. But for me, I never started to even love a guy possibly until I was 16 years old. And that was the guy I lost my virginity to. But even then, I don't think it was necessarily full blown love so much. It was in the sense of the timing, because I was literally so heartbroken. I mean, I didn't know how I was going to cope, and I felt so bad, and I was so poorly, you know, because I lost my virginity to this guy, and who pressurized me into it. And then 6 months later, he's dumping me, telling me that he's been looking at this woman on the bus stop next to me. You know, I was horrible, you know, because not only did he dump me after he pressurized me into doing that, you know, he's there going around telling me he's looking at other women. After that, I never trusted guys in a relationship ever again. So that's been really difficult for me, because I know there's some good guys out there that just wouldn't cheat. So not all of guys are the same. But yeah, so it's really difficult. But at 16, I did say I loved the guy. As far as I was concerned, I did. Apart from I kept questioning, but do I love him? But even as an adult now, if I have a relationship that's going on for a bit, I do question myself, and I don't know why I do that. It's almost like I'm questioning if I should spend the rest of my life with a particular guy, and maybe that means I'm not meant to be with one particular guy and settle down. I don't know, but it's horrible, because I'm always asking myself, like, do you want to be with this guy for the rest of your life? Sometimes I automatically think I'd love to be with this guy for the rest of my life, which is what you do usually when you love someone. When you full-blown love someone, you can see this person in your future and that you would love to spend the rest of your life with them if you want a full-term, long committed relationship, which you usually do if you full-blown love someone. You see them in your future, you think how you're going to build that future with them, you kind of have them in your mind for the plans of the future, you want to plan things together, you want them to make plans with you for the future together, you want to build a future together, want to be together in person. So that, so love can be a scale from fancy all the way to full-blown love, deep soulmate connection. And with heterosexual guys, I've never had that really deep soulmate connection, I wouldn't say. And the guy that I was with for a total of 8.5 years, when I was just friends with him for 8 months before we got together in a relationship, I thought he was my soulmate at that time. And he used to write, when I was in a relationship with him, he used to write to my soulmate Sandra like all the time, but he wasn't a nice guy to me. Apart from sexually, he was good to me, but the rest of the time he wasn't, that nearly all of the time. I'm not saying there wasn't any good times, because I liked going to theme parks and zoos and aquariums and stuff like that with him, because we liked the same types of things like that, But overall, he was very abusive, and it wasn't a way to live a life. It's very hard and horrible, and it was always one of those up and down dramatic relationships, and I know that I don't want that ever again, and I got a lot of drama from the two guys that I liked last year. I just don't want that in my life, I can't be doing with it, I want a straightforward guy who knows what he wants, boundary driven, and just doesn't mess me around and doesn't play games and knows exactly what he wants, me, and to build a future together, otherwise I'm just not bothering. But yeah, so fancy is very distinct and different than love. Fancy, you don't need to spend the rest of your life with someone. You don't need to be long term with them. You just, you just have some attractions to them, but without them being very attached emotionally, So I think it's very, very important that, that you just understand the difference, because, there is a huge, huge difference. And, if you're struggling to understand your feelings for someone, you might come across someone who you fancy, and you might be questioning, like, is this love? This is weird. It's not how I expected it, because I don't mind if I'm not with this person. And usually if you full-blown love the person, you can't see your future without them. Whereas when you fancy someone, you're not bothered if they come or they go. Now, of course, there are some people who may be a lot more detached, and therefore they might not care so much, even if they love someone, if that person stays in their life or not. But usually, if you full-blown love someone, you want to build a future together, you can't see your life without them. That's the difference. If you're with someone and you can't see your life with them forever, then that's not going to be love. If unless you can see that person in your future and you want to plan things and include them in those plans, then it's more likely to be fancy, And so when you are with someone or dating someone, you have to ask yourself how you feel, and could you see yourself with this person? Like, obviously, if you date people you fancy and you don't full-blown love, then it's kind of a safer option in the sense that you don't see yourself with that person forever or in the future, although things might change. But if the other person falls madly in love with you and becomes so attached to you, it's not really fair on them, because you're wasting their time, I think when you are more of a teenager, you probably do have more of the fancy feelings than the love. But I've known people who've been childhood sweethearts and then they get married, years later, or they're with each other for very long lot of years, forever, and so these people have met like when they're 14 or 15 years old, and and then once they got together in a relationship, that's it, they love each other forever and they're together forever, and so it does happen sometimes. I think sometimes if you meet someone in your childhood and they reciprocate your feelings, it's really amazing, because you've kind of got someone who's already usually compatible with you, and you can be with them forever. You don't have to keep searching. But I think when you are older, getting older, in later years, whatever you want to call it, I don't think I don't think like that, but you know what I mean. Then you have to assess the situation at the time, but it's a lot harder usually, in my opinion, to find someone. I think people get settled in their ways more, and I think if you grow up together or live near each other, or we're in the same schools and stuff like that, you have a knowledge about each other, you have a familiarity and your comfortability with each other, and so therefore it's kind of easier. Whereas otherwise you can get into your own habits and it can be quite difficult. Having said that, though, I think sometimes it's better to be older, because you can learn from your experiences and have a more healthy relationship with the mature knowledge of what you've actually discovered, which is people need to have their own friends outside of the relationship. People need to have their own hobbies and interests. Excuse me. Otherwise, it can be a very stifling relationship and very unhealthy, because if you do split out that person, if anything happens, then you've got kind of no one else to even speak to if you cut off other people and your friends, and that's not healthy. No. So it's important you still keep your own friends and your hobbies and interests and stuff like that. It's really important. But especially if you've come from an unhealthy kind of background, or if you've come from complicated family dynamics, or you've come from like a situation where you weren't feeling good as a child, that type of thing can impact how you deal with relationships in the future. So I think time does help with becoming a better person for another person in a relationship, because you tend to learn lots of life lessons. And if you keep repeating the same mistakes, then obviously it's not good. But hopefully you learn each time you do have a relationship, and it might be sad to not be with that person anymore, but you'll become a better person by understanding what went wrong and by changing what you're doing, to make life better for you and the other person, whoever your chosen person is in the future. So yeah, fancy and love are two very distinct different things. Because I'm a hyper romantic these days, and because I don't experience any platonic attraction, I literally skip all the part of the friendship and just kind of instantly have feelings for certain guys. That can be very, very strange. But, to put it simply, I think you get the message that when you fancy someone, you don't think or see them long term with you, or just kind of enjoying the moment. You'll fancy them as in being attracted to them, but not enough that if they were to leave and depart from the relationship, you'd be struggling or too bothered by it, or couldn't live without them type attitude, and feel really bad that they've gone from your life, if you know what I mean. You should be able to live without anyone. It's very healthy to live without anyone, but you know what I mean. When you really love someone and you've pictured them in your life, you kind of think afterwards, if you split up, like, what is your life going to be like now? Because you put pictures in your mind of you being with that person. You kind of having to reverse that now and go off in a new direction, which can be much better direction, more healthier for you. But, it's still changing what you're doing. It's still, you're going to probably find it difficult. Whereas when you just fancy someone, you kind of like, you win some, you lose some. It's kind of a much more laid back attitude. Like, you don't need this person in your life. They can come or they can go, and that's it, Whereas if you love as well on a deep soulmate level, I mean, even if you're not with that person, you're kind of still connected to them. And sometimes it can be very hard to disconnect. You can try, but if you are really soul connected to them, even if you don't speak, it's kind of like you're speaking to each other, even if you're not meant to be, through all the brain waves, So it can be quite weird like that, But we just have to remember to try and disconnect ourselves from those who are no good for us. And like I've said before, you can't open your heart up to someone else if you've got other people or another person in it. That's why I will not do dating relationships at the moment, because, you know, I've got to really get over what happened last year, and I kind of have had a lot of trauma over the years with relationships and dating, and now it's just time for me to hang up that hat and enjoy the single life, as it were. You know, I feel much calmer as a single person, so it's good. I pursued dating relationships for 7.5 years. There's no reason why I couldn't pursue my singledom for 7.5 years or more. Maybe a bit less, but maybe even more. Maybe forever, who knows? But the most important thing is your happiness, you know, whether you decide to give love a shot or you decide it's not for you, it's up to you. But I do still believe in love. I do still believe there's a good guy out there for me somewhere. And I do still believe it's possible for me to have a happy, healthy, loving, caring, committed relationship with a guy who dotes on me and, like, you know, really appreciates me and can be my bestest friend. But I haven't met him yet, and I'm happy being single. Very happy being single. And, you know, and I would not be in a relationship with a guy these days who I just fancied. You know, I might kiss a guy at a nightclub I just fancy, but I won't go around getting into a relationship with someone I just fancy, because for me, there is no point. I don't want a casual relationship. I don't want a short-term relationship. I just, you know, I want someone who wants to build something properly as a team, you know? So I just think, you know, it's up to you what you do, but just recognize the difference between fancy and love. It will really help you in your dating and relationship journey, you know? Anyway, I'm going to love you and leave you for now. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you found it useful, helpful, insightful, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to share this video with anyone you think may benefit from it. And subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell icon so you get notified of every time I go live like now or post a new video. Take care, lots of love, and I'll see you soon. Bye. Bye.